Welcome to the live stream of consciousness. The live stream of consciousness is on a quest to unravel the mysteries of existence. Every episode, we ask the fundamental question, what is consciousness? Is consciousness merely a product of our brains, or does it connect us to something greater? Explore the very fabric of our thoughts. Don't miss a moment. Expand your awareness and tap into the boundless potential that resides within you. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness.
Yes, welcome to the live stream of consciousness. You are in this moment. That's what the live stream of consciousness is. I was trying to think of some things to say about what is the live stream of consciousness. My name is Michael Zinn, by the way. It is August 15th, and this is the live stream of consciousness. The live stream of consciousness is always, but on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, we focus it right here. Everybody kind of focuses their attention, and we become a collective unit, and that's what the live stream of consciousness is. So if you are new here, I thought about this recently. I should do this right at the beginning. Take care of business. Just comment in the comments, hashtag live, if you're watching me live. If you're watching me in the replay, comment hashtag replay. This way I can get an idea of who actually catches me live, who catches me in the replay, and the comments help add to the algorithm and tell people that tell YouTube, the people, that you want to see more of this. So welcome to the live stream of consciousness. I see Pauser out there greeting all of the ascending fractal wonders. I love it when she does that. And I see Tim out there, and Ninja Kitty, of course. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's exciting. It's still August. I was able to slow down a little bit of the year that started speeding up when summer came. It started seeming like it was going fast. And I see Al HURNYAK. What's up, Al? Welcome. I think that's Al. But welcome. Anyway, I was able to slow down the year by just enjoying each moment, enjoying each day, waking up and having the intention of saying, the summer's not going by too fast. It's still here, and voila, I did it. It's still the middle of August, and I'm really happy that I was able to do that. Tonight is going to be awesome. Oh, and live, we have a Peggy Halcombe in the audience. Thank you for that, Peggy. Welcome to the live stream of consciousness. If you're new and you subscribe, I'll ring the bell for you if you tell me you subscribe. And then I will also realize it's 9:03. Time to end the babbling, which is what I'm usually doing at 9:03 after introducing the show. I'm excited tonight. I have a returning champion. I love saying that. To the show, a guest I had a few weeks ago. Eric HURNYAK is the creator of the Long Island Creative Vortex. We spoke all about that path and how that came to be, and I actually got to experience a HURNApalooza last weekend, so I'm excited to talk about that as well. So welcome to the live stream of consciousness, returning champion Eric HURNYAK. What's up, Eric?
What's going on, man?
You're going on again. I'm excited to have you back to talk about the experience that you had recently. And you said there were some moments that were really significant to you, and that's what we love to talk about, consciousness and spirituality and all of those things. But before we do that, let's talk about the HURNApalooza. I keep saying HURNApalooza. The HURNApalooza, which is, I guess, really an extension of what the Long Island Creative Vortex came to be, with the projects, with the community canvas idea and the creative people. Tell me about this year's HURNApalooza.
All right. Well, a brief history was my daughter's birthday and my birthday are about 8 days apart. And historically, my wife works with the Hampton Classic on that week. So as a running joke from when my daughter was born, I called it HURNApalooza, and we were just going to have, like, every day, her and I would just have a big kind of party, like, every day. And that was from her early part of life until 2011. So she was probably like 7, 8, somewhere in there. And then in 2011, I started turning it into a backyard party at the end of the summer. And it's really just a celebration of the people in our lives, just to kind of get a chance to see our friends and let them know that we appreciate them. And it's evolved over the years. And we started doing the canvas thing, I want to say in 2014. I think the first one, I built a big UFO out of foam and had it crash into, just a 4x8 sheet of masonite, and invited people to paint that. And just every year I've put something on the property, but now it's turned into a thing where like I have to up the ante every year. So the last like 3 years, that's been kind of the running theme. And what's good about it is that I'm able to keep doing what we do with the Creative Vortex on some level, because I haven't been able to do that out in public as of yet. I haven't felt, when COVID hit, that
Since
was
COVID. Yeah, I was going to say.
And then I just haven't felt like the right space for it yet, but I'm open. I think this last one we did, I think could actually have legs and travel a little bit, because I have the ability to kind of change that up and make it work in different locations. But this year, every year I do an epic playlist, and this year I kind of took every playlist from every Hurnapalooza and put them all on one big playlist. And because I did that, I wanted to build something that was going to represent that. So I built a giant boombox.
Okay, that makes sense. Now it all comes together.
And it's just using what I've learned through sign making and turning it into something that people can interact with. And I think it ended up being like it's one of the first times that like I built something and it came out exactly like I planned it to.
Oh, that's such a great feeling.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen very often. Like you come up with a concept, you execute it, and then you look at it and you're like, that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. That's a great feeling.
From start to finish, and I almost didn't do it. Like it was like 4 days before the party, I was like, I can't not do this. And my daughter looked at me and she was like, no, you have to do it. And so I just, from 4 days out until the party, I just worked like a crazy person until we had it up. And I don't know if you have any pictures of it, but
you know what? You keep talking. I'm going to go to Facebook. I'm going to grab some pictures from your Facebook page. I'm sure you have a bunch on there.
Yeah, it was in the event page is where you'll find it.
Oh, okay.
But it was, again, it's a great time to like spend time with your friends. People I have a group of friends that I went to high school with, and they are the family that I've chosen.
Right.
When I was 13, I found my tribe, and these people are still very much in my life and very special and very important. And every year, this is when they come out. And it's just a great time to see some people that really still mean the world to me. And, you watch, like I watched my grandparents and parents as they get older, relationships kind of, move on. And these relationships, we still always pick up right where we left off. And so it's good to have that and to be able to celebrate it every year. And I'm so thankful that these people still come out and put up with my crazy.
It was a great vibe. The people were very nice. Everybody was super friendly. Everybody was interesting to talk to. You had posters up around from all of the years you love. That's what I love about it. It's like you put so much effort into the party, and you hype it up, and then you decorate the place. This is what we're talking about here. The I don't know what you call the creation, the canvas. And it was great, and it was inspiring. I actually even got up and did some painting on it. And there was definitely a moment where it was like too crowded to get a spot, because everybody was doing it. And there's a little bit of some of the projections when I was setting up the projector.
That was great.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that too, because again, you can really integrate that with this kind of 3-dimensional sign that you did. You can do some cool projection stuff too. I was telling you earlier, also integrate a live camera feed into it. into the projector. So that's cool. And here's a little bit more of the party and some of the stuff going on. But it was definitely a great night, very successful. So kudos to you for a gathering that is peaceful and loving and all of that. And I see Angelo's out there. What's up, Angelo? Welcome to the live stream. Yeah, it was awesome. Just, good vibes all around. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Glad we finally got to meet each other face to face.
Yeah,
definitely. And you inspired me. Like when I saw what you were doing with the projectors, like immediately the wheels started to, go in my head. I'm like, we could do some cool stuff. Awesome. So I'm excited to see what we can work out.
Me too. I think what's really cool is when you integrate fabrication of shapes and things into the projection, so you can really take a space and create some depth and do some really cool things. But we'll surprise everybody when we work together, and we'll come out with that, and we'll debut it here on the live stream of consciousness.
Very into that.
Awesome. So we've already been through some of the what is consciousness questions, although I do sometimes repeat that question because the answer is always changing, always evolving, but it was only a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not gonna go there with this conversation. But I do, I did bring you back because you said you had some really interesting experiences that allowed you to connect with yourself and your own spirituality, and you thought about the show and you thought about consciousness when you were out there on this incredible journey on your bike for hours at a time. I can imagine it's a very introspective event, an introspective odyssey, I guess you would call it. So why don't you tell us the story? Tell us, even from the beginning, you started telling me before the show about how you were nervous beforehand.
So the Babs 360 ride was a concept just from discussing with an older gentleman that I met on the trail that I usually train on, about this trail that goes from Buffalo to Albany. And he said he was doing it, and I looked into it and immediately was inspired. And when I looked through my journals, it was like the day that I decided that I wanted to do it, that same day I was like, I have to do it for a reason. And with everything going on with my mother, it made a lot of sense to go down that rabbit hole. And so I found a charity that I could work with. And we spent some time talking. They gave me some infrastructure to work with to create the fundraising page, and it was basically on me as far as how the ride was going to go. Mm-hmm. And I was looking for someone who was going to be my ride along, and initially I wanted that to be my wife, which is why we chose the middle of July, because she works upstate and this time of year, and I figured, just through talking with her, I figured that this could be a great way for us to kind of integrate what she's doing with work and do this kind of event. But it didn't work out that way. So as much as she wanted to be with me on the ride, she really played a huge role in behind the scenes on doing the things that were able to make this possible. Mm-hmm. And I ended up choosing my father to be my ride along. So the story with my father is that he had a heart attack. I want to say it was like March. He had a mild heart attack, but a heart attack. And they had told him shortly after that he could go back home and he had no restrictions. And that really wasn't the case. He's had a lot of issues with medications, and he's pushed himself and had issues. And this has gone on and on. And I was looking for a way. He'd been looking for a way to include himself on this whole journey with my mother. And if people aren't familiar, my mother is currently at the end stage of glioblastoma, grade 4. So my father's been looking for a way to be helpful, to be, just to kind of, to do something, because everybody wants to kind of do something when you're in the situation. And I just thought, if we could share this experience, if we could have this moment where, he's supporting me as I go through the ride, this could be a real special bonding experience for him and I. This could be a great situation for him to get kind of out of his head with this whole heart attack stuff. That was the intention. And so he was my ride along, and it was great. You know, I drove down a couple days before, and I saw my mother. And at this stage of the game, with her progression, her communication is very labored, but you can tell that there's some sort of consciousness in there. There are things that she says, things that she alludes to, that you know she's in there, even though she really can't communicate. And it's really frustrating for her. But the one thing she said to me before I left was, she said, I don't want you to be ruined. And so the nurses and stuff have been telling her that I'm doing this ride. And I think she was trying to communicate with me that she doesn't want her situation to stop me from doing the things that I have to do. And she's consistently, I'm only coming to that conclusion because she's consistently done this throughout, you know, this entire illness. She's always put me first and try to protect me. And so for her to do that a couple days before I'm about to go on this ride, you know, it was a moment. And
to imagine, yeah.
I should go backwards and also say, and this is probably a very important part to this whole story, is that a few days before all the ride, I started freaking out. Like, I totally started panicking about doing this whole thing. I didn't want to say anything, but, you know, I was totally like, I don't know if I could do this. And I had been training. I trained
commitment.
I was doing like 30, 40, 50 mile back-to-back rides. And I knew I had it, but like resistance was definitely building up in me. And my favorite book is The War of Art. And so I picked that book back up, and it's written by Stephen Pressfield. And it's just like, it's a really easy, short read. You could read it like each day, and it just goes through like each point on resistance and what it means to be a pro, what it means to be an amateur, and what it means to face resistance, the importance of resistance, that if you feel a lot of resistance, that is equal to how important what you're about to do is in your life and how much things are going to transform by climbing that hill. And so I thought I was having like I was having the panic attacks where, like, you know, like my heart and stuff was like, should I go get an EKG? And I went and got an EKG.
Wow.
And like 2 days before I left, I like wrote Stephen Pressfield. I have his email address, and he's answered me before. And I told him, I was like, I'm really struggling with this resistance thing, and I don't know what to do. And he didn't answer me. And a couple days, like the day I left, I emailed him back, and I was like, you know what? Thank you for not answering me. I went and I got an EKG. Turns out I'm just crazy, and there's nothing that you're going to say that's going to make me do the work that I have to do in this moment. So wish me luck, and I'll email you when I get back. And that's how I left things. So went, visited my mother, drove up, picked up my father, and we went up to our first stop in Buffalo. And we had a day, we like did the Niagara Falls thing and went to Canada, and, you know, like we had like a, you know, cool, like, father-son kind of experience.
Nice.
And then it was time to get going. So my schedule was to get up at 4:00 in the morning. I would eat breakfast, do stretches and calisthenics, read a page of The War of Art, and write in my journal. Kind of like, and this was how I would get ready. And then 5 a.m. I would get on the trail. And this was all to like beat the heat, because it was 90% humidity the first 3 days I was there. Wow. It was in the 90s the first 3 days. So I was like, I can get out early, I can beat a lot of this. And 60 miles I can usually do in like perfect conditions, like 4.5 hours. So start at 5. I technically could be done by like 9:30, 10 o'clock. Go get some breakfast and kind of like get ready for the next day.
Right.
So each day of this journey gave me something completely different to work with. Day one was all about the fact that the trail was closed on the first like 2 or 3 points that I was trying to get onto in Buffalo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I throw it. I have a guide, but I also am like relying on Google. You know, if you put in the bike route, it brings you onto the canalway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there were 3 entrances that they had bulldozed out and closed. Like there was this one sign, it was like trail closed, and somebody spray painted underneath. Why? You know, and I was asking the same question. So what ended up happening was it redirected me to go on the streets of Buffalo and the suburbs of Buffalo for about an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh,
But there was
wow.
nothing expecting. And I, you know, like I had so much nervous energy. I was kind of scared, you know, because I was just getting started, didn't know where I was going, didn't know if this was leading me, you know, to a point where I was going to be able to hit the trail. And there were a few issues at play. Like I didn't even start my my iWatch because I was so nervous. But about an hour and 45 minutes in, I found the entrance to the Erie Canalway.
Okay.
And got on, and
Cool.
I was just like, oh, thank God, you know. And it was great. From that point on, it was the trail was paved. Anywhere where there was like infrastructure, the trail would be paved. And then there would be like 20-mile stretches in between where it had this like stone dust material, which is a hard pack. It's the same stuff you use in between pavers to kind of seal it in.
Right.
It's a good surface. It's a good smooth surface when it's dry.
Right.
And so day one, it was dry. But we had some really interesting things happen as I got off that ride. So I finished the ride up. I finished right around the time I should have. Even with the hour and 45-minute detours and stuff like that, I was still on pace. And I got to my father and our first stop at around 5 hours. So it wasn't terrible.
All right. So, and you said 4.5 is what you were kind of planning on.
That would be ideal.
Right.
You know,
so that's not bad.
It really wasn't. And what happened was it started pouring. As soon as we get done with breakfast and we were able to finally get to the hotel, it poured down rain for a couple of hours.
Oh, wow.
And we were watching the news, and there were tornadoes that were hitting areas like Rome.
Oh, wow.
And different parts like all around us. Where we were, it was just pouring down rain.
Right.
And I remember my father and I decided we were going to go grab a bite to eat. So we get out of the hotel. It stops raining. We jump in our car. We go to the restaurant, get out of the car, get into the restaurant, whatever. And it starts pouring again while we're in the restaurant. And then when we finished eating, we walked back out. It stopped raining. And it was just one of those moments where it was like, what's going on? You know, we get back in the car, get back to the hotel, starts pouring down rain. And it was like a 50-50 of whether or not it was going to rain the next day.
Okay.
So I just figured, all right, I'm just going to wake up and we'll just see what day 2 has to offer. So we get up and it's did my thing, the 4 a.m. thing. And we get in the car. And again, I have this like nervous energy. And my father just isn't like, I don't know, I guess he's not the same since he's had the heart attack. So we're trying to find like the entrance to get back on the trail where I was, but there's a bunch of bridges out and he's trying to figure it out and he's not really communicating with me. And I'm, you know, nervous about, you know, what I'm about to get into.
Yeah.
I wasn't very graceful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Patient. But we figured it out. And we get to the spot and it gets started. And I got to tell you, it was like one of the coolest bits of this whole trip was like the scenery was amazing. So it's just waking up and catching these like awesome sunrises next to this canal. And by the way, you're on a canal. So it's level. And the first 5 days of this ride, it's level. So in my head, I'm like, oh, it's level. That means it's going to be easy. What level means is that if you're not pedaling the bike, you're not moving. Right. So you constantly have to put effort in. And so that is a big lesson I learned from day one. Okay. Constant effort. You know, there was a whole new groove to get involved in that's very different from what I was training on. Plus the terrain when you get on that stone dust material, it's not like being on pavement. It's
Right.
not like being on a dirt road, but you got to get used to it. The same, I was telling people that the same effort on a paved road where I get like 14 to 16 miles an hour on that stuff, it's like 10, 11 miles an hour. So it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I get on the trail and it's that stone dust material a lot of the day. And because it poured down rain the day before, I counted 9 trees that were down, big ones too, that like I had to like climb over and like kind of haul my bike over.
I remember, you were telling me the story about having to pull your bike over one of the.
Yeah, it was a couple of them. It was no joke. And that's the thing. It's leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's gotten there to like clean the stuff up. Right. 99% of this whole trip, I was on this trail alone, which was amazing. But also, day 2, it was like, a thing. And the bike, when I was on the stone dust, is sinking in slightly into the ground, not like being on top of the pavement. So it's really a lot more effort to get. And it ended up being like a 6-hour day.
Oh, wow.
A little bit less miles, but it was a lot more effort. And it was a day where it was frustrating. And I really ended up having to get back into some of the hacks that I would do when I was training, which all involve, it's a mental practice. It's
gotcha.
Get back into the fundamentals of what's important. How's my breathing? How are my legs? How's my machine that I'm working with? Is the bike, sound? What am I thankful for?
Right.
How can I show love? And when I got to that, what was I thankful for that I was able to do this? How can I show love? And immediately I was like, I was not graceful or patient with my father that morning. I have to change that. And that was a moment on the trail. And it was a moment, okay, hold on to that. And now how are we going to make this like a healthy experience? And it was just to get myself back into the moment. How do you stay strong and just keep going? So the mechanics of doing these rides, like there was never a doubt the day 1, 2, and 3 that I was going to make it from point A to point B.
Right.
But there was a lot of stuff going on in my head in dealing with some of the stuff that I wasn't expecting, that my practice really meant so much more. And when you're hours in, as opposed to like a training ride, if I do a 30-mile ride here, it's like 2 hours. 6 hours, it's like a completely different ball game when you have this like inner monologue back and forth for 6 hours, and it's just straight intuition. And every time you just go with that intuitive inclination, it's exactly what you were supposed to do. And it just proved itself over and over and over again. And that took a lot of the nervous energy out. That put my brain in the space that it needed to be. It was a very pure experience.
Right. Well, I remember the first time you were on the show talking about preparing for it, talking about kind of being in tune with the bike and how critical it was, in long distance biking, to really be focused, like you were just saying about on the sound of how the bike sounds on the road and all of that stuff. I want to back up a little bit so the first day, it sounded like you felt blessed, right? Like every situation was like, here it is, the universe was kind of giving it to you. The rain was stopping when you needed to, and then starting when you didn't. It didn't matter.
Felt watched over. That's what I felt like.
Okay.
I was scared during the ride and nervous and kind of klutzy and futzing around until I finally could get to a place that seemed a little bit familiar. Once I got on the trail, it was very similar to the trail that I train on, more or less. But afterwards, when I got done with that day and we had that rain experience, I felt like there was something going on. Like and that theme went on throughout the entire ride.
Like a synchronicity to the experience. Like this was the experience was meant to be.
Fully. Like there's no doubt that this is where I was supposed to be. And I have to tell you also, day 2, so you go through like these areas, and like this first part from like Buffalo to like where we were, which was Palmyra, which is an interesting town. It's the birthplace of Mormonism, which we found out. But there's some. The canal is used, like the locks are in use. There are people that boat. There's some really cool towns, like we found, like Lockport and Fairport were both really cool towns that have like embraced this whole canal lifestyle. The bike trail. There's a lot of really cool restaurants and things to do. Lockport was really interesting because they had like a 7-tiered lock system that like basically takes your boat and brings it up like a staircase to your next level. I mean, there was some really cool, interesting things that you could stop and take a look at while you're dealing with all this other stuff. So there's a lot of dimension to the ride. You know,
life experience, that's a great experience. Yeah.
Great scenery, cool little like history blurbs, cool like museums, like definitely cool places. Then there were other parts like later on where like I went through some pretty poor areas, you know, that were very different. So you really kind of catch like a big spectrum going from point A to point B.
Wow.
And getting into the synchronicity thing, that really played a role in day 3. The next day was like the hardest day, and I knew it was going to be the hardest day because it was the most miles. So just in that, 68 miles.
Well, wait, hold on, Eric. Before you get there, I want to back up a little bit because you told me there was a lot of different experiences, right? So that first, I'm just trying to I want to highlight them, right? So the first one was the experience with the rain, you know, everything feeling washed over. But you talked about the second day with the challenges. You started to go through that routine, which you spoke about on the show the first time, the routine of, you know, kind of speaking to yourself and putting yourself into this mindset. What am I grateful for? And what can I give to the world? Love and that kind of thing. And you talked about this interaction with your dad and realizing that how it made you feel, kind of, right? Looking back on it and being like, wow, I acted out of my own ego in the way I kind of handle the situation, but looking back at it now and saying, you know, how can I make it better? I realize, you know, so you held on to that, that introspection, but you didn't follow up. How did that play out with your dad? Did you talk to him about it?
As soon as I saw him, you know, I apologized. When you know, like getting to see him when I would finish every day was like one of the better experiences. And there were a couple of stops where like I just, you know, gave him like a big hug, you know, when I got done. And him and I just we got closer. I mean, he's an odd duck, you know. We'll put it like that. But you know, we definitely were able to like have like a cool bonding experience. I think it was more than I had hoped for in the end, and cool. I think he felt inspired, but I also felt, you know, inspired by him just being there and being able to like, you know, he was trying to take care of himself. He's, you know, at the same time he's trying to find his way through having a heart attack and not being able to do the things he was able to do. Like 2 years before, this guy hiked a mountain with us and was in better shape than the rest of us. His heart rate was down. Like I was dying going up the mountain. He was like, yeah, he's like, I'm at 120 and like kind of laughing at me. And, you know, so, I mean, just coming to grips, I don't want to project and live his life for him, but I know if it were me, you know, and somebody were like, you can't bike ride right now, like it would be an adjustment. So he's going through this adjustment, trying to figure out what life looks like. He's doing cardiac rehab like 4 days a week. There's a lot on this man's mind, I'm sure. And, you know, everybody deserves grace. And it, you know, regardless of what I'm doing, he deserves grace. And I when I didn't give it to him, I saw that there was an opportunity to make that right.
Right.
And, you know, and I'm grateful to have that opportunity, and I'm glad that we addressed it, and I'm glad it went somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so that's awesome. That's how that went.
No, I love that. And I think, you know, that's part of, for me, consciousness, right? And the idea of how to navigate this life and not struggle, because you walk around and you see so many people struggling, and it has personal relationships are a part of it, and a lot of people put that into, oh, okay, I'm dealing with these situations, I'm dealing with these other people, right, in these relationships, but really you're dealing with yourself, right? That's a big part of the relationship, is what you contribute to the relationship. And I think that was that aha moment that you had, in that situation, that particular situation.
Well, there's so many moments, especially when you're dealing with relationships, where you end up dealing with regret. You end up reacting instead of thinking, instead of taking the pause. Somebody says something, it pisses you off, you react, and then you feel bad because you weren't thinking it through. And that has been like the bane of a big part of my existence, is just not, like, I should have said this or I should have done that. If I thought it through, did I need to react like that? And so trying to like get ahead of it and trying to like catch those moments beforehand are important. And, at least each day you get a chance to try it again, because throughout the day you're going to have a weak moment here and there. But
sure,
if you can catch them, if you can, and that's what the practice that I do does for me. It brings me back by asking, like, how can I show love? It makes me look at the moments where I didn't. It makes me look at the moments where I wasn't paying attention and I reacted, and how can I do this differently so that I'm putting the better foot forward. And having the opportunity to do that for hours at a shot changes a lot, because it's just constantly reinforcing, like a more conscious existence. And that's what this whole ride ended up doing for me, that I didn't expect. I knew I would get from point A to point B. I knew I was trying to figure out what it was going to mean. How does this work with my mother? I'm trying to do something like, to honor her, but I'm also having like my own experience. So what does that mean? And how do I keep it from being like this ego trip? Because I don't want it to be an ego trip. I want it to be something special.
Yeah.
And it ended up being something special on ways that I just didn't. I don't know why I didn't think that it was going to happen this way, but I didn't. And I'm glad I was surprised.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when you talked about it on the show the first time, I think there was an energy around it that it didn't seem like an ego thing at all. It definitely seemed very authentic, and the way, like you said, you kind of heard about this trail and you were interested in biking. You're like, oh, I want to do this trail, but how can I make it mean something, right? Like, you kind of had this intuition that there was something that you could connect to it. Angelo has a question. He says, when I go bike riding, I like to listen to the birds. It relaxes me. Did you have any experience in particular, or
fully day 3
All right, let's hear it.
I saw cardinals the entire trip, that entire day, and it was the worst day ever. It was forecast to rain the entire day, and so it was hit or miss whether or not I was even going to do day 3. I had built in a day off, which was day 4, just to kind of get my legs back. And at that point, like, I would have been riding well over 100 miles. And I hadn't done this kind of riding. I've done like a century ride at a shot, but I hadn't done like 180 miles at this point. So I wanted to build in a day. So I didn't know if it was going to be, we go to the next location and I backtrack the following day, but it just worked out. Like, the weather held for me the first 3 days. It rained everywhere else but where I was. That's and great. Day 3 was all stone dust, wet, puddles, mud, frustration. And I kept seeing 2 to 4 cardinals would like fly across the trail. And it just was like, that served as a reminder. I know there's significance to the whole cardinal thing, especially when it comes to like spirituality and stuff. But to me, I was like, I'm so like, I get so like I push a lot of that stuff off, and maybe I shouldn't, but I remember like hearing like Wayne Dyer say something to the effect of, we're constantly looking for these like spiritual experiences, but really we already are spiritual beings having a human experience. So it's like you're kind of wasting your time here looking for like these magical things to happen. And when I heard that, it made a lot of sense to me, because I've chased a lot of those rainbows, as it were, in other parts of my life. And now it was like, okay, I wanted to find something more authentic. But these things were happening. Like I would see the birds, and to me, it was just immediate. Like that became an external reminder to go back in, because I was getting so frustrated trying to get through this day. It was like I was like, even though I was beating the heat, 90% humidity, I was just pouring sweat.
Right.
And so, like, I would see those birds, and then that would bring me into hearing the water, seeing like different sceneries, and some of the pictures that I got, like. There were moments where I just had to stop and take a picture. Like I got this great shot of a deer, like in the water, some cool birds, a lot of like cool little moments where I would see like, waterfalls or the locks or whatever. All of those things were great just to be in there, to be riding and be in that. That said, day 3, a lot of it was on the road, and Google screwed me. Google took me 9 miles out of the way and took me to, I was on this Route 31, which kind of goes along the whole canalway. And it brought me up off Route 31, up this hill. I get to the top of the hill where there's supposed to be a road. There's no road. There's like somebody's property. There never was a road there. Google totally lied to me. And so I had to like backtrack. And so now a 68-mile day turned into like 78 miles.
Oh, wow.
And that was the day where I ended in Syracuse. It took me, that was 7.5 hours of being on the bike.
Wow. That's a lot. Wow.
Yeah. When I got off that bike, my legs and everything was just like, once you get past like 6 hours, 7 hours, like you start to feel it.
Hallucinate.
When I did my century ride, like the last like 30 miles of it, like I felt every mile.
Right.
And so we were getting into that territory, but it was still doable. But it was a very hard day, but there were a lot of external reminders that again, like pulled me back in to the headspace that I needed to be in.
I love that, the way the birds were like the trigger to bring you into the water, hear the water, to just be mindful, right? You were like, oh, that's right. There's nature around, there's life happening, there's all this other stuff outside of me. It
was the cardinal itself was reminding me, number one, to go back into my practice, but number two, because I knew that there was some sort of a spiritual connection, it just brought me to my mother. And it just kept like, if my mother can go through what she's going through with this illness and still turn around and say to me at this stage of the game, I don't want you to be ruined, or show me some sort of loving moment, never complains, never, why me or anything like that. If she can do this, then I can find what it's going to take to get through this moment.
Right.
Because the whole purpose for me riding to begin with is to find the strength so that I can go and be with her and give her the best part of who I can be. That's 100% why I ride. Because if I didn't have this, I would melt down. But because I do, I can bring that consciousness to the table, and instead of like, being angry about what's happened or sad, which it happens because I'm, constantly grieving, but I can deal with it, and I can deal with it healthy, because I can get on the bike and I can put it there and equate it to, if I can get through this moment, if I can get through this mountain, if I can make this mistake and turn around and figure it out, then when it's needed in my personal relationship, I can bring that same energy to the table.
It's the strength that you're built. It's like you're offering her your strength, right? And your
I can offer
resolve, right? Yeah.
So and
beautiful.
So that was that day, and that ended up being a great day. It was a hard day, but right after I got off the bike, things started to clear up. Humidity started to go away. And my day off in Syracuse ended up being a beautiful, beautiful day. I don't think it hit 80. We didn't have a lot of humidity. It was just It was a nice day to just kind of like, I kind of was like, I should really get on my bike and do another day, but I wanted to stick with the schedule. I mean,
right.
That's
day 4. You took off on day 4, so you took off to rest.
I did take off to rest, and then also it was like I was meeting my wife on Sunday, so I started on Monday. So to have that one day off kept us on a schedule, so where I could meet her when she would be off her work. So that night, I woke up. Well, I never went to sleep. I was petrified. All the like taking the day off was great. It was also not great because all the lactic acid and stuff that was in my body just hit my legs bad. And so I was up all night and I was in pain and I was scared because at this point I'm 3 days in. It's the most amount of miles that I've done consecutively. And I just like the resistance just came back in a panic. And I was really, really scared. And
how many have you done at that point? How many miles were done at that point?
We were over 180 miles.
So you're
most 190.
Halfway point.
Yeah. And I knew in my head that I was going to be fine, that I'd be able to get this done. But I was, the fact that I didn't sleep was screwing me up. I was like, oh, this is going to make for a really rough day. Yeah. And I just remember I got up, I did my stretches and stuff. I read a passage from Pressfield. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something that kicked my ass and was like, all right, knock it off. And I went out. The coolest part about this day was that the trail literally was walk out the door of the hotel and there was the trail.
Nice.
And I got on the trail and within 5 minutes, all that pain and all that stuff went away. Nice. And I was just in the zone and I was in the best mood and it was a gift from God. And I said it that day when I finished that ride up, that was the day I gave my dad a hug, and I was like, today was a gift from God. And it was just beating that fear.
Yeah.
Was huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I could feel it, that mental, like the anxiety of, oh my God, I still have this mountain to get over. And then suddenly just being like, so what? Like no sweat. I could do this. Yeah. I can.
Yeah. It was just weird watching like half of my mountain being created by my brain, like keeping me awake. Like I'm creating the problem here, if I'm creating the problem, I can definitely be the solution. And fear's been a thing in my life. And that was a moment that I think is going to stay with me. It's definitely something that when I'm facing moments that I'm afraid of, I think I'll remember it.
Yeah.
I think I'll be able to use that to push me through. So that was we ended up in, I think that was Ithaca. That's where I ended up that day. It was a good day. Day 5 was it was a challenge. It was 65 miles, so it was a decent day. It was a decent push, but it was, it was again just reinforcing this whole experience of living. Like this ended up becoming the purest expression of life that I've ever lived by day 5.
That's so awesome.
Because I wasn't even getting like telemarketing phone calls, we started the trip with Trump getting his ear shot off and pretty much was out of the loop after that. That was like the Sunday or the Saturday or whatever, right before I started riding. And then I was just pretty much out of it throughout the whole ride. I mean, there was stuff that we were kind of watching on TV here and there when we were in the hotels, but we really wasn't paying attention. It was like, by the time I get back to the hotel, I was just fried.
You created your whole moment, right? The whole 5 days, the whole journey was about the journey, right? You had enough to focus on. That's awesome. There's a good question. Justin Freeze, welcome, Justin. Is asking if there was any music going through your head. I'm imagining you probably had headphones, right? And listening to music. No headphones.
Never. I never do headphones on the bike.
Focus.
Because if there's, like day 3, for instance, I'm on Route 31. Like there was parts of the road where the shoulder was like 2 feet, and I had like tractor trailers blowing right past me.
Oh wow!
Also, there was like elevation and stuff. So like I want to hear what's happening when I'm riding specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have. There are points in my life where I have a lot of like inner music going on in my head. Usually not when I'm riding. Usually when I'm riding, like I'm totally in the moment, listening to the sounds of everything going on. Number one, because I want to be there, but number two, because I want to be aware of what's going on around me. So if I have to react, I can react.
Sure.
So that's a big
That's
thing.
interesting. You know what? And as you're describing it, and I'm kind of putting myself in that position, that becomes the music. That becomes the symphony of the moment, right? That you're in, and I'm just being all woo woo, but
I will tell you, there was right before I left, I watched a lot of videos on guys that did this trail, and the one thing that was in my head the entire time was like I watched this one guy, and he was from Florida, and he was like an older guy, and he had this like accent. He sounded like a Muppet to me. And every time he would stop and look at anything, he'd be like, "Oh, look at this trail. It's beautiful. So beautiful." And so every time I saw something cool or really neat, or I had like a moment, like for a second, I'd be like, "Wow, this is really cool." And then, "This is beautiful." Like, I like ruined the ride for me.
He ruined it for you. That's hysterical. But you know what? No, but I think that is kind of part of what you're saying, is that the intense focus of the trip allowed you to be mindful of the whole experience, every minute, of the experience, all of the scenery and all of the cardinals, everything. It sounds like you were really connected to the whole experience.
Every bit connected to the trail, connected to what's going on inside, connected to finding meaning, trying to keep things on a level where it was meaningful, intentional and not intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. I mean, day 6, the biggest thing that I struggled with was the fact that it was day 6. I mean, day 6 was like the day that you started to see the mountains as you were getting closer to Albany. And there was this one spot where I saw the General Electric factory or whatever it was on top of this hill. And I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to ride up the damn hill to get to the General Electric factory because it was like right on the trail, and it was the worst. I mean, I was standing on my bike on the lowest gears, just dying. And I remember like I got up to what I thought was the top of the hill, and some guy was going down the other way in like a really awesome bike, and he was like, "Hey, good morning." I'm like, "Nah, not so good." And
was that because you wanted to see it, or was that part of the actual? Like that was
it was like a clearing where I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then it wasn't cool when I had to like ride up to it, and it just went. The hill went on forever. And then when I saw that guy, I thought it was at the top of the hill, and it wasn't. There was like a lot more to go. And I finally got up to the top, and I took a minute, had my heart attack and everything, and kind of like looked at the scenery and saw like mountains and stuff. And I'm like, "This is so cool." And then I got on my bike and I coasted for 2 straight miles. It was just the best.
Yeah.
It was like the only time that like I coasted this entire trip was that, and it was just so much fun. And I remember the way that it brought me up to the Hudson River, and I was on the Hudson River for a while before I got to Albany, where there was a spot on the Lake Erie that I started at that had like the nautical with the primrose or whatever it is, the east, north, south, east, west thing in a circle. And then it was the same exact thing when I finished in Albany, right on the river. And I was on the river for a while, and it was just hitting me that this whole experience was going to come to an end. Like my time on the trail was going to come to an end. This moment that I had with my father was going to come to an end. Mm-hmm. The real world was going to start to hit. I would have to be back with the noise and, you know, all this crap, you know, that goes on in the real world was coming. And I remember when I finally ended the trip, it was awesome because I stood there for a minute and this couple passed me and they were like, "You just finished the trail?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Yeah, we did too." And it was so cool. Like, we just had this moment. They were like, "Congratulations." And I was like, "Yeah, you too." And then I got in my car and I just burst out in tears. I just had this like just total emotional dump. And, you know, part of it was like, you know, just knowing that this chapter, all the work, all the training. I mean, I started really training in like April, and we raised like close to $9,000 through this whole thing. People were like giving the entire time, which was incredible. I think, yeah, we raised $86.30 was what the total was. And people were like doing this right along with me. And that was an experience, just constantly trying to get, you know, the funds up. And I'd never done a fundraiser before. I had no idea what I was doing. It's probably annoying the piss out of all my friends and stuff like that. But whatever, the majority of the funding that we raised, that $86.30, came from family and friends, which is awesome.
It's amazing.
I can't believe how many
87.35. 87.
Okay, so I was wrong.
That's no,
you know?
that's amazing, and I feel, you know, I don't think, you know, Eric, we just kind of met recently, right? But your energy is so positive and loving and inspiring. You know, I don't think people were annoyed at the fundraiser that you were doing. I mean, obviously they all helped out. Everybody helped out as much as they could, and you were able to have a successful, you know, fundraiser and experience. You know, I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we set ourselves up for these, like, okay, I'm going to do this, a challenge. You know what I mean? And then we follow through with the challenge. I know for me in my life, I'm thinking of, like, you know, not that it's anything, it's not even the same, but like I did back in 2012, and I've spoken about it on the show before. I did this, had this idea for a calendar, the Women of Armageddon, right? 2012, the world was supposed to end. You know, I was like, what's going to happen to the Swimwear Illustrated calendar? So I came up with this idea for a mashup for, you know, Victoria's Secret meets Mad Max. And that project, like, had so much life for 6 years. I did 6 years of calendars, because all of the people that would get involved would just really, like, I guess, like, it was that thing, that idea of, hey, let's set ourselves up, give us a project, give ourselves a goal, and work towards it. You know what I mean? And not that it's the same thing physically,
but it is
like that, but
it's the same. It's the same. It is the same.
Yeah,
and
the flow state.
The hardest part about doing any is, like, I am no different than anybody else. As a matter of fact, like, I'm not, I'm just a regular person, you know. Like, I did what I did, and the hardest part of doing it was just putting my feet on the floor, you know, like getting out of bed and stop with all the crap in my head telling me I'm tired or I could push it till tomorrow or whatever. Setting those goals is what inspires me to get out of bed, put my feet on the floor. And it's like, once you stand up, that's the hardest part. Now you just go in motion and just push yourself through and you'll be fine. But it's just getting your ass out of bed and doing something, you know, that, you know, and for me, reintegrating back into society, like, the best thing that I have is that I had this great goal, but now I can recharge that battery by getting on the trail. And if I do a 20 mile or a 30 mile, I get a taste of that, you know, like real authentic, real life. And it reminds me, as you know, the more and more I do it, it reminds me of what it should be. And it's so hard to keep it that way in the real world. I don't know why it's so, like, everything is, it seems like everything is so set up to push us away from bonding and connecting to this deepness that's inside of us.
You're opening up a can of worms there, Eric. You're opening up a can of worms.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, it just, like, everything is just meant to pull your attention away from really doing the important stuff. It's just, you know, fill this hole, but you'll never fill it.
Yeah.
You know, with like all the crap that's being advertised, or the likes, or the,
Yeah.
you know, the post that nobody looked at, or the algorithm that you didn't seem to catch, or whatever. Like, none of this is ever good enough.
That's right.
And there are these moments that you can have that feel like this felt good enough. When at the end of the day, like, this felt good enough, and it felt like there was going to be more of a long-term answer to it, where like everything else in the day-to-day that you can't help but be involved in doesn't have that. It's just so short-term, instant gratification, and you always come up short, and everything's designed this way.
You know what? And I agree with you. Interestingly enough, next week I'm going to be talking about conspiracy theories with Metatron. It's going to be a really awesome show. I'm really excited. I don't usually like to give that stuff energy by even talking about it, but I certainly feel like there are forces out there that, like you said, are intentionally trying to pull us away from our own humanity and the real power within. Now, I want to say this because I think this is a moment right here for me. I'm trying not to tear up, and I hope this means something to you. I don't know if you could see the screen right now, but Al Herniak, his comment is, "My kid is my hero." And I mean, that is, I just got chills just reading that, Eric. That means a lot. That is really, really powerful. And thank you, Al, for sharing that and being here. And I do love your boy, man. He's a good kid. He certainly is. I wish more folks were like Eric. Yeah.
I'm glad he was with me. You know,
yeah.
I'm glad, Dad, you were with me. There was nobody else that it would have been right to do this with. You know, I love my wife, and I wanted her there with me, and she was in my heart every day, and she does so much.
Yeah.
But like, this was like a moment that we shared, and I'll never forget it. You know, him and I talked about doing a canoe trip on the Susquehanna, and that just didn't happen. But this did, and you know, he's dealing with some stuff right now, and you know, I want him to get better.
You got me tearing up here, man. Holy moly, I'm all emotional. And Peggy, thank you for being here too. Saying, Al, he is indeed amazing. What a tribute to you and Barb. And again, and Paz is out there saying very sweet. It really is. It's such it's like, that's what's important, man. Like, that's what's important. The people that love us, that we love, that whatever forces that be rip us from the reality of how important that love is and that connection, and that's really what it's all about, you know. I mean, it really is.
I think doing these kinds of things is what brings us back to that, you know, because I did this, I had that moment.
Yeah. Totally.
And because I'm doing this, I'm able to, like, you know, appreciate what's going on with my mother more. You know, like, both my mom and my dad didn't ask for what happened to them to happen to them. And it seemed like life for both of them just turned on a dime. And for me, that just means that, like, you got to do things that matter now, because tomorrow is just not a guarantee. You know, tomorrow, everything can totally get turned upside down. And what do you want to do? Do you want to, like, live your life saying, like, man, I should have? Just do it. Just, you know?
I love it. I love the fact that, like, even though, like, you know, you're not a psychic medium or whatever, like, the basic message that's coming through is so important, and that's what the live stream of consciousness is about, is really being able to connect perspectives, connect experiences, and help each other get through the moments that might seem tough, because really they're not. You know, it's all how we handle it. And I see a new Anam out there. Welcome. Thank you for being here and joining us. Yeah, Eric, you're amazing to talk to. I'm excited that you and I are now friends.
Me too.
And going to be working together. I'm looking forward to what comes of that. So I'm imagining there may be another appearance on the live stream of consciousness in your future. But thank you so much for being here.
I should conclude by saying, so I was going to tell you what comes next.
Okay, yeah, let's go with that. What comes next?
So, I mean, right now, obviously, I'm coping with integrating what I've learned on the ride and putting it in the day to day. And right now, the most important place for me to be is a presence for my mother. We're right there. We're right at the end. I mean, she's mentioning relatives that have passed over the last few conversations. She had a conversation with a very close friend of ours today where she mentioned her parents are talking to her from heaven. And it's just my place right now is to take what I've learned from this and bring that to the table for her, because I know she's scared, and I know she's dealt with all the issues, all the 8 stages of grief that people go through. I'm sure she went through it. She just never let me in on it.
Right.
And so that's a big part of it. And another path for me is it's a good starting point, and I've been wanting to write a book, and I had said a couple of weeks ago that I'm going to start a new path, and that is the new path. So I started an outline and began writing a book. And I wrote Pressfield when I finished my ride, and I told them, hey, I finished the ride. Thank you so much again for your work. And I said, now I'm going to start writing a book. And he messaged me back, and he said, congrats to you, Eric. Now start that book. Keep pedaling, baby.
That's awesome. What a way to wrap up the experience, to bring you into your next chapter. No pun intended at all. But that's really great. No, writing a book is a very cool decision. I think that I've been talking to a lot of people. I know it's a little bit different, but I've always been told to journal, right? And I have.
I do it every day.
Yeah, and it's just really, it is an amazing way to connect to yourself, is to put pen to paper, let your thoughts just come out, go into a little flow state, and write. So there you go. There's your reason to come back on the live stream of consciousness. When your book is coming out, we'll do a whole feature on it. But Ninja Kitty saying thanks again, Eric, for being here, and I thank you again for being here.
Thank you for what you're doing, man. This is
great. Thank you. I love it, and it's pulling me. It keeps pulling me back every week. Pauser, thanks, Eric and MZ. I usually put people in the green room, but I'll let you stay here for a minute while I just look at my calendar real quick. I do have some cool stuff going on next week. As I said, I'm having a special episode on Wednesday with Wendy Gale, who channels Metatron. And in my last conversation with Metatron and Wendy, Metatron wanted to talk about conspiracy theories, which I find really super interesting. And like I said, I try not to give that stuff energy, but Metatron, I got to talk to Metatron about that stuff.
I don't even know what Metatron is. What's this Metatron?
So Metatron is one of the hierarchy of angels. Like you've heard of Saint Michael, and all of the different angels have different connections to God and source. And Metatron is, I believe, the first angel, and really the conduit to anything that exists physically is Metatron. So kind of it's interesting. You'll have to watch. Wendy can explain more than I can, but it's again, part of why I do the live stream of consciousness is to connect myself with all of these different expressions of how people live their life and connect to source and express that connection. So Metatron will be here on Wednesday talking about conspiracy theories. And then Thursday, the regular night, is John Marine, who is Deborah Markowitz's husband. So Deborah Markowitz was a filmmaker on the show, had some awesome stories, and revealed that her husband John was also quite spiritual and into some of these conversations. So he's going to be on the show. The 29th, I don't know if you're doing it, but I'm going to Madison Square Garden to see Incubus. So I'm going to be off on the 29th. Then we get into September. I've got Lethal Linda coming up. I've got Danielle Bragna. I've got Christine Fay. I've got so many amazing people coming up. So I'm excited. I'm excited. It's going to be a good end of the summer. And again, folks, thank you, Justin Freeze. Much love to you and your family. Eric,
Justin, man.
Thank you guys all for being here and contributing your energy to the live stream of consciousness. And thank you, Eric, for being here as well.
Thank you for having me, man.
I will see everybody next week as soon as I can find my outro movie here. Peace.
What is consciousness? The live stream of consciousness is on a quest to unravel the mysteries of existence. Every episode, we ask the fundamental question that has captivated human minds for centuries. Is consciousness merely a product of our brains, or does it connect us to something greater? Explore the very fabric of our thoughts. Don't miss a moment. Expand your awareness and tap